I'm really thrilled to show you today's case up for review. Now, today we have sunny side up design. This is MESHROOM S, and if you remember, I already did a review on their past model. Now, here we have something really cool, and I'm really fascinated by it. And I won't lie, because I really like small chassis, and I really like to, let's say, play around with water cooling, custom water cooling. This time I didn't do it because the time is a bit of the essence today and basically this month, because you'll see loads of cool stuff coming soon as well. But what I did here is quite cool actually, and you'll see why. So the MESHROOM S is I would say a bit larger in volume when we compare it to Meshlicious, but it's quite compact. On the front there's a possibility to place 240 or 280 radiator with fans, and you still have nice room here for cables, rerouting them and everything else. So you could just go with this nice SP750 that comes with braided cables, and it looks quite nice, I do have to admit. Now let's talk about some details. So what I did here is I placed the ASRock Z690 Phantom gaming motherboard, and logical, I placed Intel Core i9-12900K just to see how it will perform. Here we have on front, this is 280 EK AIO Elite, but I only used two fans, so these are two 140, and they're really silent when you don't go up to the maximum RPMs of the fans. Now for some technical details and specifications. Now there are four varieties of colors that you could order the MESHROOM S. So you have the fossil gray, you have charcoal black, sage green and peacock blue. It's quite interesting basically to get some, I would say, quite interesting colors when it comes to the chassis. Now, I do have to mention that the final finish is full matte. And it's so nice to see and refreshing basically to see a different type of finish that really does attract, I would say. I mean, this color right here is quite also interesting because it's refreshing in terms of seeing only black and white or eventually gray ones. Now this is full matte. It really does stand out, I do have to say, just with the color. Now when you take a look at the chassis, you have four panels, so front, top, left and right, which are attached to the chassis with those small pegs, so you just have to pop the side panels out. And this is somewhat called a fine mesh, which is well ventilated. Why? Because the airflow goes quite nicely through the whole chassis, even though you do have these cables which might restrict the airflow. But when I get to the temperature part, you'll see that there's no issue with cables, with the power supply, with the graphic card. Literally no issues. Now let's continue. So 14.93 liters in size, which is a bit bigger than the Meshlicious. Supports regular size hardware. So when we're talking about regular size, it supports large GPUs up to 4 slots. So this is quite interesting. And the length is up to 336 millimeters. It can support up to two 280 millimeter radiators, but then you'll have to sacrifice the GPU in some sort of a way because there is literally no other positions to place it. So you have an option to place the fans, and I would suggest placing the fans here on front instead of the inside, because the cables can be tangled up here in the middle between the radiator and the middle chassis, and they might get stuck inside your fan. So I would place the fans on front just to, you know, create some sort of a protection that the cables don't get stuck in the fans. When we're talking about the size of the power supply, so you can go with an ATX full size or an SFX. It really doesn't matter, everything can fit. You can go with two 3.5 inch hard drives or 7 2.5 inch hard drives or SSDs, depending on the GPU size. Now, when I'm mentioning the sizes and everything, do take into consideration that, for instance, if I place an ATX power supply, that you lose some space here for cable routing, that's for sure. If you place 7 2.5-inch SSDs or 2 3.5-inch hard drives, you'll lose the bottom compartment here, and you'll need to use a shorter card that will go here on top, which we'll get to that part later on. So you have two possibilities for radiator support, reservoirs, and stuff like that. You could mount a pump press combo, for instance, here on front, or if you go on the other side with the short GPU, you can mount the pump press combo here at the back, sticking right here straight. Well, basically horizontally, so you'll have to tilt the case to fill it up. You have a choice to buy the chassis with or without PCI Express riser. I've got here the version with PCI 4.0. Now the interesting thing is that you could install here an ATX motherboard. And the size of it can be up to 305 x 244 millimeters. They suggest that the GPU can be placed here on the side with maximum height of 124 millimeters and maximum length of 307 millimeters. And the radiator height up to 120 millimeters. So basically you could squeeze quite a lot. There's also a possibility to place micro ATX, which also gives you the same, almost the same configuration when we're talking about GPU support, radiator support, radiator fan height when you're placing it on the other side of the motherboard. But when we're talking about the ITX, as I did over here, so the maximum GPU height is 153 millimeters, which, for instance, in my scenario, when I placed the GPU on front, on the side, it's a bit wider, so it's colliding with the tubes of the AIO. So this is something that you do need to a bit wiggle around and be careful while placing the components inside when we're talking about some order. For instance, I would place, of course, the motherboard, power supply, and the GPU first, then place the radiator and everything else on front. But let me show you something. So, okay, the power button is at the back. So that's quite cool, I would say. Something different. I mean, it's a small case, so it won't bother you by pressing the power button at the back, because it's, as you can see, it's really small, compact, and you can do whatever you want. On the top you have 3 USB ports. One is Type-C 3.2 generation 2 and 2 are USB 3.2 generation 1. Everything is basically toolless when we're talking about removing the side panels, and that's it. So when we go with the PSU length, as I already said, you can place ATX power supply. The maximum length is 170 millimeters with front fans only. 160 if you go with upward tubing for the AIO, and if you go with downward tubing like I did right here, 140 millimeters. That's why you do need to have a shorter GPU right here at the back, so you can rearrange the tubes here at the bottom. So as you can see, it's quite cool, I would say. You know, an SFX power supply fits perfectly. You have loads of space. This is 750 watts. You could go with 850 watts that can support a nice CPU, nice GPU, and everything else. Right here we have a 280 radiator, which I mean, if you could mount it to lower or higher or anything similar to that, you can manage the tubes properly. But as you can see, I can close the side panel without any issues. One thing I do have to mention, so with the case you get HDMI, which is sending right here the whole video. So it's angled by 90 degrees just for the GPU if you decide to place it on the, like so. So you have an opening here at the back, you push the cable and connect it to your HDMI, and it can work quite nicely. When we're talking about the other side, now as you can see, I placed my, this is an older card, even though it's really good still, RTX 2080 Super Gaming X3 with EK water block. And the GPU is not a problem when we're talking about the height of the GPU with water block. The problem is that the fitting part, where you place the fittings for your water flow, are sticking out too much, and then they leave 4.5 centimeters of clearance for your radiator and fans. This could work only in terms if you decide to go with the slim fans that are, I don't know, you go with the Radiator 2.5, 2.7 millimeters, and you go with some slim fans such as Noctua has 1.5 millimeters, which would then fit perfectly. So you'll have half a centimeter of clear space for between the GPU block from the fittings and, well, not from the fittings, but from that bay where the fittings connect, and from the radiator. This is actually quite interesting because if you take everything properly into consideration and mount everything as it should, you could actually do a quite nice loop. But let's talk about thermal. So yeah, quite interesting. As per usual, AIDA 64 Extreme Edition system stability test. With CPU and GPU ticked, CPU went up to 63 degrees Celsius and GPU went to 56 degrees Celsius, which is actually quite impressive, I would say. I mean, it's still lower than any other AIO that did in full open front meshed part. It worked perfectly fine, but it was higher by 10 degrees Celsius, I would say. And now for the most interesting thing and the one test that I actually take into consideration. So CPU, FPU, system memory and cache with the GPU, this is the result. Intel Core i9 12900K with 280, so this is 200, it's not 360, it's not 420, because these results can be achieved with those. Went up to 82 degrees Celsius. I don't know how, I can't explain, so don't get me wrong, I'm just reading the results that I got. So 82 degrees Celsius on 280, and this is what I said, the cables won't restrict the airflow, because either the air is going directly out, doesn't go through the motherboard, doesn't go through the power supply. Okay, power supply starts to spin because of the load and everything else. But 82 on the processor, and we got some 4 degrees more on the GPU, so 60 degrees Celsius. So 82 and 60. I didn't achieve that with the 360 radiator, I didn't achieve that with 420 radiator. Basically what I wanted to say is that this case, even though it's small, it's really compact, 15 liters, let's circle it around, so 1496. And with all the cables dangling around here, even the tubes and everything else, it managed to get lower temperatures for the 12900K compared to some bigger cases with more fans and outtake, intake, everything that we take into consideration. So yeah, quite interesting. I like the design, I like the color scheme, I like everything that is about this case. Loads of options. You get brackets for mounting the radiators on the side, you get brackets to mount 240 because the original chassis is designed for 280, but you get already pre-attached for 240, so that's also cool. You have a possibility with mounting your Apres combo anywhere. You can mount it here at the back, which will give you an option to have a horizontal placement. The smaller graphic cards like ATX graphic cards, they have more space here at the back for either Apres combo, hard drives, SSDs, or whatever you wish or whatever you decide. Cool thing, you could choose the riser. I would always prefer going with a riser that is acquired with the case if you go with an ATX motherboard. And of course the HDMI, which is really, believe me, helpful for you not to search around to grab an HDMI that is angled for 90 degrees. Loads of accessories, loads of screws that come with the chassis to make the whole thing stand out. And finally, one more cool thing that arrived separately from the chassis is the tempered glass side panel. Now, of course, the tempered glass side panel will definitely affect the temperatures on the GPU if it's air-cooled. We have no discussion over that. It will definitely affect the whole airflow, and it will definitely affect the whole 12900K running on 82 degrees Celsius. It will run much higher without a doubt, because the only way that the air can go is on top and at the back. This way, when we're taking the mesh part, hot air is just going everywhere and it's going outside of the case. But the tempered glass gives That's something. I won't place it right now because I still have foil and I really want to do it properly to rearrange the cables and everything else. But a nice side tempered glass, which gives you an option basically to have visibility of all components, if of course you desired to have something like that. Don't get me wrong. So it's all up to you, of course. If you want side panel, you can always go with both side panels. I have one, so most likely, yeah, here on the CPU it will look cool. I have nothing left to say when it comes to MESHROOM S, because from the Meshlicious, which I really loved and really like working inside, especially the custom loop, this one is also really cool because the modularity, when we go with possibility where to mount everything, ATX support, micro ATX, different positions of the radiator, which we didn't have in the past model. Now we have everything right here. I think they listened to what we were saying. You just need to be very organized when it comes to this, and you can fit wonders inside. So guys, yeah, you can check out the links below directly on their website. I think they have currently today, they have pre-orders open for MESHROOM S, and also you can check out the links where to buy them. Basically, if it's under pre-order, you can pre-order them, or if it's already available for sale, if you're watching this video quite late and after a couple of months, you can check out the links below, and that would be it. If you're new to the channel, if you like the content, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos, and eventually I might put some custom loop inside, of course with hard tubing. So guys, thank you for watching today's video. Have a nice day, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye bye.